Welcome to True You Ministries with pastoral counselor Stacy Echeverria. Stacy is a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught her the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. We're grateful that you've joined us for this week's broadcast. You can learn more about Stacy and her heartfelt desire to help people much like yourself who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling her at 626-461-3344. That's 626-461-3344. Or feel free to email her at info@trueyouministries.com.
And welcome to another edition of True You Ministries. How are you doing today, Stacy?
I'm doing really great, Ted. How about you?
I'm always good, and I feel so blessed to spend this time with you. Today's topic is ministry wives whose families have left the ministry. And today with us, our guest is Debbie Maselli. She is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and veteran home educator, missionary wife, associate pastor wife, lead pastor wife, and business owner. She has lived in 2 countries and 5 of the contiguous states. Her interests include kayaking, riding, walking the beach, traveling with her husband, crafting, baking, and spending time with the family. Debbie currently serves as a licensed clinical pastoral counselor in Florida. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, Stacy, you always start with a personal story and introducing the pain of this show. Can you give us a little personal story when it comes to ministry wives whose families have left the ministry?
Yes. So for me, my experience was not as a lead pastor's wife or anything like that. I was a lead in ministry at one of the churches that my husband and I served at for a great long time. And so we had headed up an emotional healing group for men and women. And we had been wanting to go to church in our area, in our neighborhood. We were driving about 10 to 15 miles every Sunday to go to church. And, our thinking was, well, we'd like to invite people to church. And then we'd say, well, it's about 10 to 15 miles away. It didn't make a lot of sense. So we were seeking the Lord in what to do. And we were not going to move unless the Lord, number one, said it was time to move. And then he would show us where we would go. So that was an easier process, by the way. So when we finally got the go-ahead, we went to our lead pastors. We told them what the Lord was doing in our lives. And at first, they completely understood. Then there was an incident that occurred in the church, and it was extremely upsetting to me. I made my concerns known. And unfortunately, neither of the pastors reached out to me to talk with me about it. We had run into them at a friend's daughter's wedding, and we were completely ignored by one of them. And many of the people that attended our church who would normally say hello to us kind of shunned us. And so that was really a very difficult and painful experience. That was 7 years ago. And we've never resolved it. We've never talked about it. And my story is just one of thousands, and it's unfortunate. So for me, it's like, well, I'm in a huge church right now. And both my husband and I, we both said, yep, we're not interested in serving in the church, in that institution. I'm in ministry every day working with my counsel, my clients. And that's the ministry that I've been called to. So I'm not limited to being in the local church. So that's a little bit about my story.
Well, thank you for sharing. And Debbie, what about yourself? What's your personal story when it comes to ministry wives whose families have left the ministry?
Well, part of my story is very similar to Stacy's. We had a lot of things that went on in our church, and the final culmination was one day we had gone to an event that was out of town, and we had been planning on spending Saturday night at this event as well. It was a ministry event for pastors. We had someone, a deacon or an elder, speaking at the church. I can't remember who. And we came back to church, and we had a church of 225. This is after COVID, and about 150 were still coming and attending in person at this point. It was April or May after COVID initially started. And we went and sat on the front row, and no one said hello to us beforehand, but a lot of people didn't get there early, and we were there early. And then after the service, not one person said hello to us. And my best friend even looked at me, and she looked down at the floor and kind of busied herself with something and turned and went the other direction. Mm. We walked past all these people that were milling about in the church, and we walked through the office where there were people milling about, and no one still said hello. And we got out to the car, and my husband looked at me and he said, "Do you realize that not one person even acknowledged our presence? It's like we could have been ghosts." And we were the lead pastor family.
Right.
And we had been having discussions prior to this, and I had told my husband, "It is time for us to leave. Things are not going well." And he said, "Well, we can't leave until we've lost influence." And I said, "Honey, I've already lost influence. I'm not sure what you're thinking." And that day when no one said hello to us, he said, "Well, it has begun." And so at that point, it started turning in his mind, where will we go and what will we do? And prior to that, I had said to him, we were discussing whether or not we should leave, and he didn't want to yet. He said, "Well, would you turn your back on all of these people? I mean, these are people, we've spent 12 years here. And, look at all the things that these people have done for us." And my husband had cancer. My oldest son had been through a marriage breakup, which was really hard. We'd had just a lot of things that had happened, and these people had stood by us. And he said, "Would you leave these people and not care for them?" And I looked at him and I said, "Honey, even if you just retire and we move, to another county," because we were in a small town, I said, "Even if you just move to another county, none of these people are going to follow you. None of these people are going to come with you. I'm the only one who's still going to be with you." Mm. And it was kind of one of those moments where, like, reality just kind of hits you in the face, and he just looked at me with confusion, like, really? No one's going to call us? No one's going to talk to us? And the only people who have contacted us since we left 4 years ago have been really our best friends. We had one couple that we were friends with. There's about 4 other people that have called my husband. Those are the only people that have called him out of 225 people.
Wow.
So the feeling that Stacy had about going to the wedding is just kind of is an example of how so many people feel when they leave ministry. They've invested their lives and their heart and their soul, and they've sacrificed time with their family, and they've sacrificed having a retirement, because you don't make money when you're in ministry. They've sacrificed all kinds of things. And then when they leave, it's just like, "Oh, okay, well, we used you. We're done."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's got to be tough too. You said 12 years with the church. So Stacy, that's got to be tough. Even, whether it be church or relationship, when it's that long of a time that goes by that you've invested, it's got to be even harder to separate.
It is. I've found that to be such a weird thing, especially at the church that my husband and I were at. Now, mind you, my husband was at that church for 30 years, and I was there for 10. Very long time. And so I remember asking when the lead pastor, who was there for 27 years, handed over to his son-in-law and daughter the lead pastor reins, right? I remember there was an incident that was going on in one of in my small group, my emotional healing group that I was facilitating. And I asked the female pastor, I said, "Are we that church that when someone leaves, we no longer have a relationship with them? Are we that church?" And I asked her that because I knew there was a history of it. And she flat out said, "No, we're not that church." So then when my husband and I experienced what we experienced, and the issue on a Sunday morning was one of the members of our congregation was teaching that morning on a Sunday on white privilege. and I lost my mind. I got up and I walked out, and I was so angry about that because I thought, how is this appropriate for a Sunday morning? This is not appropriate at all. People were so upset, but I was the only one that walked out. And I made my opinion known about this. It was very well known. Somehow it got back to the pastors from someone else, an associate pastor, rather than talking with me. There was an assumption that was made and relationship was broken. And that's what happens. That's what happens sometimes. And I find that to be a real concern because aren't we supposed to do it better than the world? Aren't we supposed to show another way of dealing with division or misunderstanding in relationships? But I'm finding that over and over and over again, that the expectation that I have that as believers we would behave better is idealistic. We're broken people, right? And so hurting people hurt people, and it happens in the church as well. And that's an unfortunate thing. The skill set isn't there, which is unfortunate. And so what ends up happening, and thank God it didn't happen for my husband and myself, it did not impact our relationship with the Lord. We didn't turn away from him or the church, the overall church, not the building, but the church. Other people, depending on where they're at in their walk, that could be a major turnoff, a major wounding, where they're like, oh, wow, if that's how you're representing Jesus, I don't want anything to do with your Savior. And they will leave the faith and the overall body of the church, which I think is just really, really sad, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. For those just tuning into True You Ministries, today's topic is ministry wives whose families have left the ministry. If you'd like to call Stacy, reach out to Stacy. Call her at 626-461-3344 or email her info@trueyouministries.com. She does individual counseling, couple counseling. She really covers it all, and she's really good at networking. So if she can't help you, she definitely can guide you towards someone who can. And our guest today is Debbie Maselli, and she's a licensed clinical pastoral counselor in Florida. And so what are some scriptures that you're always good at giving us scriptures, Stacy. What are some scriptures that deal with this?
Yeah, there's a couple that Debbie and I came up with. We really like this. Hebrews 13:5-6. God himself has said, I will never fail you or abandon you. Therefore, we say with confidence, Adonai is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can a human being do to me? And then Psalm 118, 6-8a. With Adonai at my side, I fear nothing. What can human beings do to me? With Adonai at my side as my help, I will look with triumph at those who hate me. It is better to take refuge in Adonai than to trust in human beings.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
So how can we prevent ourselves from hoping and trusting in the wrong things when in ministry?
Yeah, I'd love for you to take that one, Debbie.
Well, that's a big loaded question because, as ministers, we end up, we enter into ministry with a lot of naivete, usually. We think that we're going to go and change something or, do something big. Jesus went to Jerusalem and he looked at it and he said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I wish that I could take you under my wings. And, his heart was broken because the thing that he wanted to do, he couldn't do. And very often in ministry, the thing that you feel called to do is not necessarily the thing that you end up doing in the long run. And the bigger that churches get, the more that pastors are not really pastors in the sense of the gifting. They are CEOs. So they're running all of the programs, they're managing the money, as far as the books, they're not managing necessarily how it comes in. They don't necessarily know who donated what. It depends on the church, but they are the ones responsible for deciding where it goes. And then they have to manage all the teams, and some teams don't really want to be teams, and some people aren't really in church for the reasons of Jesus' mission and vision, which is to go into all the world and make disciples. You know,
Right.
even the people who become leaders aren't necessarily acting in that vision and mission. What they are doing is being kingdom builders. They get themselves a position and build their own kingdom. So we have a lot of naivety we have to overcome when we enter into ministry.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Stacy and Debbie, I was curious, how long did it take for you guys to find a new church after leaving the old church, and how did you approach that differently? Debbie, starting with you.
Okay. Well, we chose a church when we moved to Florida that we actually moved, a couple of thousand miles away from where we were. We were in Iowa and we moved to Florida. And we chose a church that was specifically designed for unchurched and dechurched people, because we just had a lot of wounding that we needed to overcome. And we were there for about a year and a half. And then God moved us to another church. My husband had wanted to go. It's called Salty Church. And I said to my husband, I said, that is like, that name, it just sounds like a gimmick, I mean, we live by the beach and we're going to go to Salty Church. I just don't want to go to a gimmick church. So I'm not going there. And
maybe it's all captains, sea captains or something.
Actually, it's designed for surfers. It's a surfer club.
That's
cool. I am not a surfer. I don't look like one probably either. But, so we ended up being moved there. But for us, I think a story that kind of illustrates this is we were driving down the beach, down the coast, beautiful blue sky, puffy cloud day, gorgeous fall weather. And this is about 3 months after we had left Iowa. And we knew that day they were having a business meeting to decide whether or not they were going to promote somebody to senior pastor. And we didn't have any desire to know anything about it. So we're just enjoying the day. We had been to St. Augustine and had a wonderful lunch, and the music was playing, windows down. We're just really enjoying each other's company. And we get a phone call. And it's my friend from another state. And she said, "Are you online right now?" And I said, "No, why?" And she says, "Good." And she hung up the phone. Like, I looked at my husband. I said, "Do you want to know what's going on?" He said, "Nope." I said, "Okay, me neither." And we driving a little bit further, about 20 minutes down the road, and my youngest son calls and he says, "Mom, are you on the phone? I mean, not on the phone, online." And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Good, stay off. You don't need to be on there right now." Okay, and he gets off the phone. So I looked at my husband. I said, "You still don't want to know?" And he said, "Nope." And I said, "Well, me either." So we kept going. So we found out later on that the church had actually put the business meeting on Facebook Live public.
Oh, jeez.
And in order to promote the guy that they wanted to promote, they were degrading my husband.
Oh.
And my youngest son was laying in bed, and it was, around lunchtime. He was laying in bed scrolling on Facebook and saw that they went live, and he opened it up to see them bad-mouthing his father.
Wow.
After 12 years of ministry. So we didn't know what happened. Nobody would ever tell us. Fast forward about 6 months, we're in this church for dechurched and unchurched people. And we invite my son and daughter-in-law to come with us to a Christmas Eve service. They had come to visit us. And he said, "Mom, why are you even going to church?"
Yeah.
He said, "You know what? Do you know what those people did to you and what they did to Dad? How could you even step foot in a church again?" And that was like the moment for me that I just thought, we invested 25 years, 27 years in ministry between missionary and pastoring. And for our own son to not want to be a part of the body of Christ because of things that people in church had done. that were so, I mean, even the world would be like, seriously, y'all? And
Yeah.
that was really, really, really hurtful. That was probably the worst moment for me, to see that my own son was being turned away.
Yeah.
But fast forward again, we started attending Salty Church because my job had changed. And my husband said, let's just go try that church. And I said, oh my gosh, all right, you go try it while I'm at work, and I'll go to the 12 o'clock service with you after I get off at 11. And so I went, and he said, I went to the sunrise service and it was great. And I said, you want to go back to the second service and hear it again? Really? And he said, yeah, because the other pastor speaks at the main campus then. Okay. So we went, and the first day that we went, it just felt like home. We knew that we needed to be there. It was great. That Christmas, we went to Salty Church for, I think, like a 2:00 service, sunrise, not sunrise, 2:00 Christmas Eve service. And then my son and daughter-in-law had decided to try another church. And so we went to their church too. And within about 3 months, my son and daughter-in-law had decided they're going to go to Salty Church too. And now my son plays on the worship team about every other week. And
I love it.
so it's been really, really good. It's been a good place for us. God has definitely redeemed the things that have happened in our life. But it was really painful to just see how people's basically worldly behavior just can tear so much down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad the Lord, guided you to the right church, and you found a great church. And there's something about surfing too. I think my pastor is a surfer, Pastor Steve Rabachi of Pacific Life Church. And every once in a while, I'll be down on the boardwalk in Pacific Beach, and I see him coming out with a surfboard. And hey, Pastor Steve,
That's great.
That's awesome.
There, so
that they're building waves now, and inland they're building these wave pools where you can learn to surf in the middle of North Dakota or something.
That's pretty cool.
It's hysterical.
Surf anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is a big topic, so we are going to do, this is part one. We are going to do part two. If you want to contact Stacy, you can call her at 626-461-3344 or email her info@trueyouministries.com. And Debbie, her contact information is down below as well. You can email her at newme180@gmail.com. And so, we're definitely going to do a part two because there's so much still that we haven't really talked about. But before we finish the show today, we just have a few minutes left here. Stacy, what would you like to say to somebody who doesn't know the Lord or who has drifted apart from him?
Yeah. Well, what I would like to say is that whatever you may have experienced with church people, Christians, that was negative, that was hurtful or wounding to you, that's not the Lord. The Lord is kind to us. He's loving to us. He's compassionate. He wants the best for us. He wants to bless us in all things. And I know for the longest time, I would associate, before I came to know the Lord, I would associate the bad behavior of Christians that came on my path along the way to Jesus, because I didn't know him. But we're supposed to be his ambassadors, his representatives. And I was thinking, oh wow, I've been hurt enough. I don't need to be in church to have more hurt and wounding like that. So to not associate the worldly behavior that sometimes we'll experience from Christians with Jesus, who is a loving, kind, compassionate God who has an abundant life waiting for you. So we're into the new year at this point. I look at the new year as an opportunity of hope and new things that the Lord wants to do in our lives. And so Now is the time to say yes. So don't wait. We don't know when the Lord's going to come back. It looks like he's going to be coming back pretty soon. So now's the opportunity to say yes to him. And he's waiting with open arms to call you home.
Hallelujah. Love it. Like I said, there's going to be a part 2. This is part 1. So make sure, and if you missed any part of today's show, you can go to trueyouministries.com. And we are going to be doing a part 2, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Until then, God bless.
You've been listening to True You Ministries with pastoral counselor Stacy Echeverria. Stacy is a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught her the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. You can learn more about Stacy and her heartfelt desire to help people, much like yourself, who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling her at 626-461-3344. That's 626-461-3344. Or feel free to email her at info@trueyouministries.com. That email once again is info@trueyouministries.com. Thank you for tuning into today's show, and we'll see you next week at the same time. And may God richly bless you.